Hey, hey, hey. Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Kezia Nicole, and I am here with your Don't Be Angry, Be Active podcast. Now, for those of you that don't know, Don't Be Angry, Be Active podcast, our focus is to show and highlight businesses and nonprofits that are taking action to solving problems in the community, business owners who have taken action to take control of their financial situation and their generational wealth, and individuals and community leaders that don't just talk about it or they don't just complain about it. They take action in their community to find opportunities and resources to support and uplift the community. Now, today we have a very special show. One of my favorites is youth, young people. I am the founder of a nonprofit organization that focuses on youth that live in low income and high crime zip codes. And it has always been my passion since I was a little girl to really find a way to impact youth that are considered at risk. My own personal story is I have a sibling that was incarcerated at age 14. And I think that if there was some type of programming or there was a relatable you know uh, activity that he could participate in outside of sports, that he would have had a chance along with all of the other youth that are wrapped up in the criminal justice system. Now, all youth, specifically Black youth, aren't at risk, but to a certain extent, there is a risk level for most youth of color, in considering the system that are in place. And so today's topic, 10 tips to keep at risk youth engaged in your program, is super special to me. And to join me, I have a wonderful guest that has, worked with youth over several years. We're actually from the same state, in which we're going to talk about that. So those that know, I need everybody to please welcome. I'm going to bring into the studio Mr. Corey Bolton.
What's up, Keith? How you doing?
What's up, Corey? How are you?
Hey, blessed, surviving, doing well. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I'm super excited about today's topic. It is such near and dear to my heart. During the pandemic, actually before the pandemic, I was really, really stressed out about what was going on in the community in regards to gangs and kids being recruited, and kids having access to things that they can relate to. One of the reasons why I got started in the nonprofit is not only because of a sibling of mine who was incarcerated at age 14, but also when I was, out volunteering for different organizations, it was hard for me to find an organization that really focused on youth that are hard to engage. And that was very disheartening. And it was my goal to say, hey, I'm going to do something about it, because a lot of youth are being written off as, oh, just let the criminal justice system handle them, right? And it's mad important that we have programming that is diverse, that can, deal with multiple youth. So I'm so great. It's so great that you're here. Corey, can you share a little bit, give us some details of your credentials, your background, and all of that?
Yeah, for sure. So, my background is in psychology. I got my bachelor's degree from the Angelo State University. I'm about to say something completely different, trying to boost myself. Now, so bachelor's in psychology from Angelo State University. From there, I jumped right into the field. I worked in a few like residential treatment centers, did insurance, adult. Uh, mental health, kids' mental health, was like pretty much the whole spectrum. And it led me to an organization that I work with now called Communities and Schools of Hampton Roads. Our mission basically, yep, shout out. Our mission basically is to surround the students with a community of supports to encourage and ensure that they're successful. We focus on grades, behavior, attendance. We do counseling, like outsourcing, out resourcing, everything that we can imagine, just to make sure our kids are supported. So, and here I am now today.
Awesome. Yes, we love communities in schools. Shout out to Dr. Sinclair and Miss Hope Sinclair for the amazing work that she does with communities in schools. Can you share a little bit of how you got interested in, like youth involvement or youth relations?
Yeah, for sure. So it was actually when I was working with the adults that I realized that a deeper impact could be had with the children. I realized that if we can get them before they reached a certain point and kind of, rehabilitate, redirect, they can avoid meeting some of these issues when they become adults. So, as soon as the opportunity arose for me to work with children, I immediately jumped on it, and I felt called to really make an impact right there with the youth. The youth, I feel like today have one of the most impressionable minds through social media, through just the way that the world has advanced, society has advanced. So much pressure on the youth to be so many different things. So if we can have the right people in place to kind of like, help them navigate through those waters and, tell them what's right and what's wrong, what will lead them to certain, paths and, how to avoid those. I think that's the best way to make that change and that impact. So I jumped right in.
Well, now you bring me to a very good point because, working in the different municipalities, working in the cities, I guess is the right word, and working and being involved in different states. When you say youth, what age are we talking about? Because ultimately, like, this is 10 tips on how to keep youth engaged in your youth program. And so I think that our audience really the our audience, anybody that's interested in learning about youth programming, anybody that's interested in starting a youth nonprofit, anybody that's interested in just being a volunteer, I think getting an understanding of identifying who it is that you're looking toward. So when you say youth or impressionable age, what age are you really um m- are you thinking of would be most impactful, and what age would be too late?
Yeah, for sure. So to me, I feel like youth is anything that's under a legal adult. So less than 21, you're still really even 21, you're still technically kind of a youth. But really anything below that, I feel like is considered youth. Um, because I'm seeing now, like, with communities and schools, we're in elementary, middle school, and high school. And just talking with some of my colleagues, like, we're all kind of facing a lot of the same issues, which is odd for, high school age to be facing the same issues as, elementary age. So, that tells me that the impacts and the things that are influencing our society and our youth are, you know, broad.
Yeah.
Um, so, directly, I would say 21 and below, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean for real, like, so let's really talk about it, right? Let's talk about it. So one of the things that I noticed and one of my colleagues had shared with me is that different cities kids are older as far as like mature in regards to the level of being risk, like their risk level, right? So like word on the street, and based on experience, a kid in Virginia Beach and or a kid in Chesapeake would that's 11 as far as their risk level, that would actually increase them to being at a risk level that's possibly close to like a 16-year-old, right?
Right.
Based on like the situations that they've experienced. And we're not saying that all of the kids in Norfolk or all the kids in Portsmouth have a higher risk factor, which I'm sure that there is some type of research that will be able to identify that. But when we really talking about like a kid that's 19 years old, like they may have had, you know, risky experiences that place them way above 16. Like they may
Right.
be, 19. They may be at 30. They maybe have experience of a 30-year-old. You know what I mean? And an 11-year-old may have had experience as a 16-year-old. Have you had like an opportunity to experience that?
Oh, absolutely. Most of the kids actually that I work with, the maturity level was far beyond their actual years. So I was working directly in a middle school, so we deal with 11 to around 14. Some of my students, and some of the things that they have faced already in their lifetimes, like I have yet to have to deal with. And like I said, that just kind of puts into perspective, like you said, the different areas, different cities, as far as maturity levels. It's all over the place depending on where they might be. So yeah, I some of the stories that I had to deal with and talk to with these students is I had to come back and like just decompress from. You know what I mean? Like it's almost mind boggling that they have to face such realities.
And we're going to talk about that because when you are a youth you know organization provider, you got to learn how to compartmentalize, and you got to know how to decompress, right? You got to be able to manage that. I think when I hear you say that, you've had students that have experienced things that you have yet to experience, then that brings to my mind, like, okay, how do you even deal with that? Because a lot of people create programming based on their personal experience, like when they grew up and what they wish they had, right? And oftentimes that doesn't necessarily connect. So that actually brings me to step number one, which is
Right.
to meet them where they are. And so sometimes, especially guys that get out of prison, sometimes they come out of prison and be like, I'm gonna start a youth program. And that's nothing wrong with that because your experience is very valuable. But sometimes this generation, it's the same problems, I personally think, but it's in a different form. So meeting them where they are and being able to identify where they are, um, based on the generation and the things that they have to face and the forms that they have to face, I think is really, really important. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because like you said, if there's a situation that you're faced with that you haven't yet faced yourself, like how do you give them advice, how do you guide them through that? And so like you said, meeting them where they are, that's where I come in and like just try to really understand, like, okay, tell me about this whole entire experience, like tell me what happened, what led to it, like how you feel about it, how you think that you should work through it. Like give me everything, like let me be you, like bring me up to where you are. And then my best practice at that point is just to take everything that they've given me and try to work with them through it together, like me with my adult mind and any experience and knowledge that I may have, and them being the ones that are directly experiencing it firsthand. Like can we come up with some type of solution together? Like let me be another perspective, let me be another avenue for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Which kind of transitions to the next tip, which is find relevancy in activities, because we are not. Let me tell everybody out there that wants to start a youth program, we are not in a phase where you can just lecture
No,
and speak to these kids.
they're not
It's
trying to
so
hear
great.
that at all. No,
Corey, let me tell you, I gotta tell you something funny, right? So online, it's this dude that is like, "You want to be a speaker?" Da da da. And I put in his comment. I was like, "Sir, you can't just speak to these kids." Like he was trying to say that you can speak at schools and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with speaking at schools, but like for real, these youth are so inundated with information. They're on information overload. So when they wake up in the morning on their phones, at lunch on their phones, go to bed on their phones with tons and tons of information, and then you're asking them to sit in front of you and listen to you talk about things that they don't even know what you're talking about because the vocabulary is different, the
right.
the everything is different. You know what I mean, Corey?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a great point because attention span has drastically decreased while the need for instant gratification has tremendously increased. So, that kind of leaves you in a spot where, like, yeah, you can't just expect them just to sit there and listen to everything you have to say. Like, they can, like you said, they're already on their phone. They probably already know something about what you're saying. So you have to bring like tangible results. You have to show them. Like really, that's what it boils down to. You have to show them and be what you're talking about. You can't just be somebody, just another old person lecturing them, because that's
Yep.
how a lot of them they see it. Just some
Yeah.
other
And,
lecture.
and they really know how to act like they listening to you.
Yep.
You'd be like, man, they were smiling and repeating what I said. And then you ask 3 months later, what you like? I don't know. I don't even know what he
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah. Or you ask them like what they take away. They say the last thing that they heard, the last thing that you said. Like, oh yeah, I'm just where to find you on Twitter. That's oh okay.
No, no, this is the one that killed me, right? They will, like, you'll ask them, we could be talking about like how to spend your money because we teach financial literacy. And then you ask them, so what you learn? How to stay motivated, how to stay focused, listen to your parents. Like they just be rolling off whatever make you
Right.
feel good and be like, oh, they was really listening, but they don't be listening
Nope.
at all.
Nope. Not if it doesn't make sense. It has to make sense. It has to be
Be
reachable.
relevant.
Yeah, it has to be relevant.
Absolutely. I was gonna say that, and that's the other thing is that like a lot of youth they look to go to like social media. So, what would you say that like some of the benefits that they um when it comes to social media, what have you seen it? How have you seen it be a benefit to them?
Well, just the influx of information, the influx of like real information as well, not just jumping on a website from a respected news source. Like they can get real stories from real people who are done or are currently doing what they're trying to do. So in a lot of ways, yeah, social media you can follow some decent profiles. It just all depends on where your attention is focused. Like you can
Yeah,
a whole bunch of wrong accounts that will lead you
yeah.
down the wrong path, or you can
Negative.
follow the right
Mhm.
accounts. So
Yeah, and I was gonna say they also look at it for positive affirmations, right? And that would
yeah.
be step 3, right? Like tip 3 would be give positive reinforcement.
Mhm.
But see, right now, they think it's positive reinforcement when they on TikTok, right? Because like they base a positive response based on how many people follow them, based on how many people like them, you know what I mean? And just really, making them feel good about themselves. What would you say, like, how can a youth program combat the entertainment and positive reinforcement that social media gives you?
That's a really good question, and I feel like a lot of programs are kind of facing that. Like, how are you competing, or how can you be better than like just TikTok? um,
Right. More interesting than TikTok. Like,
yeah,
"Would
more
you come to this
interesting.
program?" No, I'd rather just watch TikTok.
Yeah, yeah. So the answer to that then is it kind of goes back to tip one. It's like meeting them where they are. So if it's TikTok that they're heavily engaged in, like see if y'all can make a couple of TikTok videos, or see if y'all can do some things together that will tie in the message or whatever goal or achievement that you guys are trying to achieve, and just put it through some type of source that they already are on, like TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Going live is major. If you go live and just allow them just to be, and y'all are just together, just being positive and up, like
And
it's a
then they
good.
get attention from positivity, right?
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
and I mean, I think one of the biggest things that I notice is that sometimes, like, programs are spotty, right? Like, I remember growing up in public housing and, like, we would only see people around Christmas, Thanksgiving,
Those photo ops.
back to school,
Yeah.
and like you said, photo ops. And so, tip 4 is just remaining consistent. Like you have to be consistent. And that's where research and planning come into place. And I've been guilty of it myself, right? In the past, like I didn't position myself to be consistent. And so that was a negative like impact, you know what I mean? And before. And so, remaining consistent and just showing up. What are some other ways programs can remain consistent, you feel?
So yeah, I mean, use the resources that are already available: cell phones, texting, email, DMs, like that. Still tying in that first just that, like, the source that they need, and you speak. But um, it's a lot more difficult now to, like, physical games, especially like right now. Summer,
Hey guys, I'm sorry, we're having a few technical difficulties. Um, we are gonna see if we can bring Corey right back. Corey, if you are still there, put in a private chat. Um, if you're able to readjust. But yeah, like he's absolutely right on that. Like, you want to make sure that you show up and you send, you connect with them in more than one way. Um, so you know, releasing barriers and try not to come from a perspective of like, everything is supposed to be perfect. Everything is not supposed to, like, allow them to be free with to be who they are. I'm gonna bring Corey back in. Let's see. All right.
all right, cool.
Hey. So yeah, I was really just sharing with the audience about, finding ways to release barriers, and creating reasonable goals. So those are tip 5 and 6, where it's really, really important that, the normal thing, which is the SMART goals, but more
Yeah.
so making them appropriate for you. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they have to know that you're a real person. They have to know that the information that you're giving them is coming from a place of, like, genuine care, and genuine support as well. If you kind of share some relative stories that you have experienced or that you know of from childhood, or somebody that a friend of a friend, like, give that to them. Let them know that you're in the same position that they are, or that you once were in the same position as them. So
Yeah. Yeah,
sure.
I love it. I love it. Now you spoke on immediate gratification. And that's one of the things that I love, is to identify what it is that they like.
Mhm.
Um and our tip number 7 is just give tangible rewards. Corey, what type of rewards have you seen that kids are like have been attracted to, or um, that you think they like?
Yeah, so again, I was in the middle school, so the hot one was Takis, hot chips, things that you would think wouldn't even really motivate them, but they would kill. Or no, I'm not gonna say that, but they would do anything for some hot chips or for some Takis. So,
What have you seen that programs have maybe brought in that didn't work?
um, books. Unfortunately, like, yeah, we know books are important, but again, it's meeting them where they are. So, uh, yeah, bringing in books, or I would say two childlike type of rewards. Things that some older adults may assume kids would like. They don't really like. So
Pencils?
yeah, yep.
I was trying to think
Yeah,
something else, like
yeah.
stuff that they don't even know what it is. Like, yeah,
Because a lot of
pencils,
times, like, books are a
erasers.
good thing, but if you're bringing in books, like, they're a lot of times they're just books about something that doesn't even. It's just like just a reading book, just something to read, just something to pass the time. And, like, yeah, that's important, but you want to make sure it's something that will make sense to them. So yeah,
Yeah, like and notebooks too.
yeah. No, actually, I mean, notebooks are great because a lot of
They
them
like
like to
notebooks.
journal, right? And yeah, so yeah, notebooks are a very good reward for them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's what's up. That's what's up. We
because
are getting down. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just saying. Fortunately, like mental health has taken a front seat to a lot of today's issues. So a lot of people are concerned with how they are mentally. So they do like to journal. They like to get their thoughts out. A lot of them are artists, so they like to either draw or just create poetry, raps, sing, or songs and things like that. So journal, some good pens and pencils, absolutely.
I'm
My bad.
sorry. Mm, my I'm having technical difficulties. But yeah, like drawing, that's what's up. Yeah, I didn't really think about that. That's what's up. See, guys, we are all learning together. Tip number 8 is expose to new and interesting information that aligns with goals and dreams. Can you share a little bit about that, Corey?
Yeah, so it's really just expanding their horizons. A lot of the students, again, that I worked with haven't gone outside of their immediate neighborhood, which is wild because there's so much that is just like a few blocks over, maybe 2 or 3 blocks from the school that I was working in. So yeah, just show them that there's an outside world. There's other things that they can engage in. There's museums, there's parks, there's um, I don't know. Even just going out and seeing something new can change somebody's whole perspective. So
Yeah, for sure. And we actually have a training class, a master class coming up, where we really are going to dig into how you do that, right? Because I think a lot of times programs don't take kids places because there's a whole logistics part of that. Like there's a whole thing that you wouldn't even think of, that you have to consider when having to do that. So you definitely want to get plugged in with, how to expose you to new and interesting information. Um, Tip number 9, I love tip number 9, present testimonies from similar backgrounds. So hearing from somebody. Now, this one can be a tricky one, right? Like it can be a tricky one because ultimately I remember being with a group of youth and they had like we had guys come in and teach them about like, you know, the experience of going to prison or whatever. And when we got done with it, can you still hear me?
yeah, you
Okay.
good?
When we got done with it, the guys were like, I said, "How you guys like that?" They were like, "We don't." I was like, "What do you think about his story?" They're like, "We don't care about that. Like, my brother been to prison. My daddy been to prison. My uncle been to prison. My brother been to prison. Like, I don't even know him. I don't know him. I don't know where he's from. I don't know him." So they weren't really interested in hearing stories from people they didn't know, because it was easier for them to relate to someone that they knew from the block than it was a stranger talking
Right, right.
about their experience in prison. It was kind of scared because I don't know that scared straight really worked. I don't know what have been your experience in regards to the concept of scared straight or things like that.
Yeah, I guess totally it's a different generation, and like I even had one particular student that was welcome to the idea of going to jail, and that kind of like shook me up, and I was like, 'cause that's growing up for me and a lot of people in my generation, like that was the last thing you wanted. Like yeah, we've had family members, friends that may have had to go down that road, but we still didn't want to face that. We want to do everything but that.
Mhm.
So the fact that this particular student was like, "Man, yeah, I want to," to me, it kind of put into perspective the reality of what he's facing with in his outside life, in his current life right now. Like if your situation is so bad that you're open to going to jail, like that's kind of shocking. So yeah, I don't know. Like I'm kind of caught up on that one. I'm kind of
Yeah.
like it's a different generation with that. So
Yeah, and it's a lot of stuff online, like, as far as, like, videos and stuff like that, and a lot of times for youth that we work with, specifically at-risk youth, they get a certain level of clout of obtaining felonies. They get a certain level of clout because they don't even really feel it until they become adults. At that point, they're a totally different person, right? So I think that's another, like, community conversation that we're gonna have to have. Do felonies, juvenile felonies, even work? And is it a waste of time and money to give a kid a felony when he's not even one? He look at it as a badge of honor until he becomes an adult. And we all know that when we were kids, our mind changed when we become adult for the most part, right?
Right.
Especially when they're engaged with programming, like communities and schools, like Young Investors Group, like other organizations that are, trying to expose kids to opportunities. Like, telling a kid he gonna get a felony, that means absolutely nothing. So sometimes the testimonials are great. Um, but I think, if you are a person that want to go into speaking to youth, that really consider knowing who your audience is, so when you're giving your testimony, it can be effective because just telling somebody they don't want to go somewhere when it's around a it's considered a good thing, in certain aspects depending on where you are. And then also age, right? Like, telling a kid who's 7 you don't want to go to jail versus telling a kid who's 14 who half their family been in prison and they've come back fine. You know what I mean? They doing decently well to their perspective because of course they didn't see anything. That's not necessarily anything that would scare them from committing a crime, and tapping into that delayed or instant gratification that they would get from committing a crime or getting in trouble.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I really think that, testimonials are great in sharing your background, but you really got to know who your audience is. You really got to know what those kids have experienced for to make it impactful.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's tip number 9. And tip number 10, the final tip, is include and encourage support of family, communities, and goals, and family and communities and goals, and open up accountability on multiple fronts. Share a little bit about what that looks like, Corey.
Yeah, so the more people that are involved, like in this goal achievement, um, I find that the more longevity you have with that student in terms of them reaching their goals. So, um, making sure that grandma, mom, brother, whoever is in their immediate circle is making sure they know like what they're working on, what they're working towards. That kind of just opens up it's kind of like duplicating yourself. So not only are you focused on getting to this place, but everybody else is involved as well. So if everybody is responsible and accountable, and this, whoever you're working with, this particular kid, student, like they know that, they see that, that will, kind of build up that wall so that they can't revert back. They can't go back because they have all these eyes looking at them, hopefully encouraging them, like, hey, you're supposed to be doing this, or hey, how's this going?
Yeah.
So just
Yeah, and
expanding yourself.
that's where that perspective, it takes a village. And a lot of people try to be a one man show. Like, I learned that you cannot be a one man show. It can't just be one person, because ultimately even kids with two parent homes, they even struggle. You want to know why? Because it takes more than just a good mother and a good father. Like, you need a good aunt, uncle, school, professional, neighbor. Like, it takes literally a group. And I think that getting into real estate, because Corey, you're familiar with real estate, right? That if we start to move into our neighborhoods, we can build that village so we can influence those youth, because it's just beyond, it's every day for them. They have to be stimulated, on multiple, because that's what happens when they're online. That's what happens when they are, on Instagram and TikTok, is multiple people, right? That's touching them from a digital standpoint, encouraging them to either do something negative or positive.
Right.
That even goes to gangs, right? Like, gangs is not just one person. That's multiple people encouraging you, that's affirming you. And I think that sometimes in society today, we become individualists. I'm
Right.
worried about my kids, you worried about your kids, I'm worried about my legacy, you worried about your legacy. And it's not really focusing on the total village. And the village isn't just, shout out to people who do all the event back to school and all of that stuff, but the some of the stuff that the kids are experiencing are much more consistent. Goes back to tip number, I think that was 5, being more consistent. What are your thoughts on that, Corey? And we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. You repeat that last question.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, what are your thoughts on, like, the village, people being separatists,
Yeah.
and everybody got their own youth program, but we're not, coming together to, collaborate. It can't just be one person in regards to, like you said, that accountability from multiple fronts.
Yeah, completely agree. I feel like the way that things have trended in our society, like a lot of people saw that they didn't really have any other support, so they had to do for self. And on some in some perspectives, like doing for self is perfectly fine. Like that's great. But when it comes to a community and the support of the community, we're kind of lacking in that regard because for whatever reason, probably a different conversation for a different day. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
And so, guys, we are on YouTube Live. I encourage you guys to reach out. Put in the comments what you think. What do you think a community support looks like? What does the village look like, and what have you done to be a part of the village? Uh, don't forget that if you're interested in joining either our workshop, boot camp, or master class to learn how to, create good programming for youth, engaging programming for youth, don't forget to connect with us. We will be having a a boot camp coming up, and a full blown master class giving you step by step opportunities to learn how to create an engaging youth program. We only have a few spots available, so I encourage you to go ahead and connect with us. Send us, you know reach out to us, DM us your email information so that we can give you the information you need to get started for our August class. Thank you all for joining us. Those of you that are watching the replay, don't forget to don't be angry, be active, and, you know, connect with us if you have more questions. Corey, do you have any last words?
I don't just yeah. Please definitely reach out. The master class is going to be great. Like that's the opportunity to kind of join the village and start a village. So ton of information will be there, like workshops, everything, like everything that you need to go ahead and start the process. If you've been waiting and wondering like how you can get involved, like this is how you can start.
That's right. And we're about to hop over to Instagram and talk to our Instagram family. So, bye, guys. Don't be angry, be active. Peace.
Peace.